Gentlemen, good evening. My friend Tracey, how are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. And of course, this season I've been telling all of our guests that how much we apologize because we've been playing phone tag. So much been lifing over here. And so I just want to say, thank you for your patience.
Of
And,
course.
it's because it's just this calendar. So how's
Life is
everything
life,
going?
and it just happens, right?
Yeah, yeah. And before we get started, I want our audience to know that we were waiting for the president of the NAACP Pittsburgh branch. He may have got tied up. I think he is jumping on now. Just a moment.
There he is.
And there he is, ladies and gentlemen. I
Hi,
was just,
Taylor.
hey, how are you? I was just telling our audience that we were waiting for the president of the NAACP Pittsburgh branch. So before you, and I knew you were just getting off. So before you have to jump off, would you like to introduce yourself to our guests tonight?
Hello, Miss Tracy. It's such a pleasure to see you. Um, I
Always.
do I do apologize for hopping on a little late here, as Miss Terry know I was just walking out of work, so trying to find a good signal here in my car. I hope tonight goes well. I know Miss Terry is going to have some questions for you in your bid for city controller
Mhm.
for Pittsburgh City. Um, and we look forward to hearing from you from what your vision is looking going to look like um, within this civic engagement series. And I just want to say I appreciate you for coming on and allowing us to interview you.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys having me.
So with
So,
that, good night, Mr. President. And we know that you'll be watching. And so, I will talk to you soon.
all right, bye bye.
Bye, Daylon. Thank you.
So yeah, so Tracey, you know what? So a lot of people just wanted to make sure that you know what we do here at West Empower. I'm sorry, and the NAACP Pittsburgh branch in our educational community civic series, just making sure our community is involved with the who, the what, the where, and the why, and making sure our community knows the importance of every single election and not just the presidential election. So I want to again thank you for taking the time out on your canvas trail and visiting us tonight. So if you don't have any questions, let's get started.
Let's go.
All right. So actually, what motivated you to even run for city controller's office, Tracey?
So that's a good question, and it really kind of evolved over time. So throughout my whole career and my life as an adult, my whole purpose was to serve the communities and serve the people that I worked with and that the neighborhoods that I lived in.
Mm-hmm.
So, to that end, I started my career in mental health. That's where I caught the policy bug because I was finding people who clearly were not able to work, but weren't able to access the disability benefits. They
Mm-hmm.
weren't able to access wellness treatments. And that really fired me up. And I really wanted to advocate for them. So I really got involved in that way. That led me to doing the Coro Center fellowship,
Mm-hmm.
which got me a lot of exposure kind of across all fields, which then led me to working for Mayor Tom Murphy.
Okay.
So, in that capacity, I worked in economic development and really learned the breadth and depth of the city and all of its neighborhoods. And I then served as the youth policy director there. Flash forward, take some time out. I ended up working for various nonprofits, raising funds and awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Among those was the Carnegie Library, the Jewish Federation, and the Humane Society. So, all sort of passion things of mine.
Yeah.
And then I got the bug to get back involved. I had worked on campaigns and done other things and that sort. But a good friend of mine, Chelsea Wagner,
Yes.
asked me to come and work in her office because her community affairs person was retiring. And she knew that not only was I a community organizer, but also a community uplifter. And when I came into the office, we were at a really critical point where the issue of UPMC and Highmark not accepting each other's insurance was huge.
Mm.
And so many people said, well, that's not really, sorry, I got
Okay.
excited about it. That's not really what the controller does. But we both agreed that because it was so impactful to so many people and so many taxpayers, that it was absolutely under the purview of the controller's office, because the office is truly an office of possibility. So through that, we won that because we got community town halls together and we gathered all the voices, and it just really caught on. And the group of people, the mostly women warriors that gathered together to make that happen, was so moving. So then when I began to step up into leadership in the office starting in 2018, I saw what an impact I could have in the office as well.
Okay.
And then when Chelsea left, I became acting controller. So I had talked to Corey O'Connor years before, and had even suggested to him that he might want to consider running for county controller at one point. And then when he was appointed, so many people asked me, why didn't you go for it? And the truth was that I always felt like I would be a behind the scenes person.
Okay.
And I had to really look inside and say, why did I think that? Was it because I was a woman, because I'm a mother, all of these things? And then I really felt compelled to step up into leadership because I knew I've done the job.
Yeah.
I know what to do. I know the difficult questions to ask. I've been at the table. So really, it just made sense. It is my time and is my opportunity to serve in the best way that I can. So that's why I'm running.
Wow. You know what? And I'm so glad that that you touched on how, you had to think to yourself, why did you feel that you had to stay in the background? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Knowing that you had the passion, knowing you had the know-how, knowing you had the knowledge, because you were back with, you stated Mayor, yes, Murphy. And so it's not like this isn't something that you did not have the education and the knowledge of. So I'm so glad that you brought that up, because a lot of people, that I hope that our listeners is listening, that a lot of times we do that as women.
Absolutely.
So I'm glad you brought that up and also put it behind you and said, let me step forward. And so now, if elected, Tracey, what are the top 3 priorities of yours?
It's like you framed it right for me, because when I go out on the campaign trail and give a stump speech, I say the same message every time. And I've been saying it since day one. So I have 3 very distinct priorities. Number 1 is Pittsburgh Public Schools. Because I believe that we need healthy schools to have healthy communities. We've seen, there's so much that ties into that with affordable housing and equity across neighborhoods and that type of thing. But ultimately, the point is with the city controller's office is that the city controller gets 25% of its salary from the Pittsburgh Public Schools.
Okay.
And right now they're saying there's no presence of the city controller's office. And I want to change that. I know that there's some limitations in oversight, but I also know that last year, Michael Lamb and I testified because the Auditor General was eliminating school oversight across the state.
Right.
We pleaded for him not to do that, but because it was a Republican majority, it happened. But now we have a Democratic majority. And I truly believe that we can affect legislation not only to reinstate statewide overview, but also to get more powers at the local level. My second priority is plugging up the gaps that we're going to have in our budget. So once COVID money dries up, once whatever happens with property reassessments, we're going to need to turn to other sources for funding. Right. And the very last thing that I want to have happen is have that burden fall on the shoulders of taxpayers. So I think that there's 2 major ways that we have to recoup funds back into the city. The one is land banks. So our land bank, since 2014, has rehabbed 0 properties. Our neighbors in the Mon Valley have rehabbed 101 properties and brought them back on the tax rolls. And that's working with 28 different municipalities. Right. We're just one municipality. And we have put up so much red tape that we need to break down and really get that moving. The second way to bring money in is really to turn to our large nonprofits and have them pay what they owe in
Mm,
terms of payments in lieu of taxes. So they put a huge burden on our infrastructure and our resources, and they're not giving anything back in return. I'm
right.
the only candidate in this race who has said emphatically that I will pursue that and move that discussion into action. And I know because I was there during the healthcare battle, I was there for the worker battle,
Mhm,
and we
mhm.
really mapped out what it would look like to come to a pilot agreement. We know they could do it because they've done it in Erie County and they've done it in other states. And finally, my third priority is community. I think one of the greatest things about Pittsburgh is our people. We're kind of gritty and we're a funky bunch, and but we really have heart. And I think that all of these neighborhoods are so distinct, and we cannot just govern from Grant Street. We have to go out into the communities and hear what the needs are and make sure that the funding is distributed in a fair way, and the money that's already been out there, that it's going to actually serve the needs and priorities of the people. So just one quick example, I've gone to several community meetings in Homewood.
Mhm.
Certainly public safety is a big issue. But number one, they've been asking to get their streetlights fixed for
Right,
years.
right.
And they're told that they don't have money to do that. And I think as controller, I would roll up my sleeves and I would see, where has the money gone? Why is there not money? And where can we divert funds to really meet that basic community need?
Yeah, yeah, and you know what? I appreciate that. I appreciate your answer because I want to make sure that our listeners heard because a couple things, Tracey. When you stated, you were already on the front line. Numerous times I have been out there, and you're right there on the front line. So I want to make sure that I speak on that, especially when we were talking about when you stated about the huge nonprofits and bringing them, because right now a lot of the conversation at our tables, in our hair salons, our barbershops, our dinner tables, it's the big nonprofits and paying their dues. Also, you had stated about the schools, um, and also how you'll stay in the community. I had read that you were saying that if and when elected, you're still going to go out in the community and still hear from the community. Tell us a little. What would that look like?
Absolutely. So I started a listening tour on my campaign, going to different neighborhoods, inviting people to come out. I would continue that during my administration. I think I'm really accessible. I'm out in the community all the
Yeah.
time, but my business cards have my cell phone number on them.
Hmm.
And my team thought that I was crazy for doing that. But I truly believe if somebody really cares, and I hope that they do, then
Hmm.
they'll reach out to me. And that's okay. I want that. And that's really important to me. So, I will always show up and I will always make sure to do that. My I'm born and bred here. I grew
Hmm.
up in Greenfield. I now live in Point Breeze. You know, I understand how this city works. I understand what I don't understand. I know that the East End is very different from the South or the West or the North.
Hmm.
And I get that. And I get that it's really important to develop relationships with some of the key stakeholders in all of those areas, to constantly be in the know and to constantly have an ear to the ground to see what is going on in those neighborhoods and what the needs are and how they can be met.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. And yes, I really appreciate it when I read that, just not coming on the campaign trail, that you're going into communities and into our neighborhoods, but that this is something that you promise to continue. So
Absolutely.
I want to make sure that, that I asked you about that. And thank you so much. And so let's talk about contracts, Tracey. So if elected as controller, as we know, it will be your ability to approve city contracts.
Correct.
Um, Tell us, how can you or how will you leverage this responsibility to make sure that the communities of color are getting the same business opportunities as the white counterparts communities? Tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So right now there is a tool called Open Book. which lists all of the contracts. But the scope of information there is very limited because you can't search across, one provider, or you can't search across where that was, the contract was given from, and if there's, preferential treatment in those contracts. So that's something that's really important to me. I think that one of the first things I would want to do is an audit of city contracts to look at if we are fulfilling our requirements for MWBE and what those requirements are, and should they be raised? Because I think that's really important. I have heard too many Black-owned businesses and contractors who say it's not even worth it for them to do business in the city. And
Right.
that's really a shame, because we should be encouraging that. I would also go further to say, in the county, when there are contracts, we do inspection throughout the whole term of the contract to make sure that there's nothing happening that shouldn't be happening.
Right.
So that they're not hiring subcontractors, that they're not paying people under the table, because that really hurts our tax base.
Right.
And it hurts those people who are doing it the right way. So to me, I would like to bring that model to the city as well, where we're inspecting all along the course of a project and not just once it's completed, to make sure that it fulfilled what it needed to fulfill. And the last thing I'll say about contracts is that the controller has the ability to withhold funds. So if that contract is not being met, or if those standards are not being met, the controller can withhold payment until that is satisfied.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that was one of my questions was, what power does the controller have when these contracts are not met up to standard of how they are supposed to be met? So I'm so glad that you mentioned that.
We actually did that at the county level when I was acting controller. There was a contract with the jail. And as part of that position, I sat on the jail oversight board. The training that the jail sought out for their guards went against legislation that had just passed, where we were not to use any type of weapons or rubber bullets or anything in the jail. And this contractor was proposing to do that.
Right.
So, the very first thing that we did was said, we are going to withhold payment until that is no longer the case. And we also said that we're going to withhold payment until we get the credentials and the resume of this contractor. We never received it, and therefore it was outstanding for a really long time, until it ended up going up the ladder to, the county legal department, because we really stood our ground. That's important. Budgets are priorities, and budgets are values, and it is the controller's job to protect the taxpayer in that regard.
So, and thank you so much for that. My next question is, because of one of the reasons because of why we do these education community civic series, if you could take less than 30 seconds, less than a minute, and just for someone who has no idea, what actually does the city controller's office do, what would you say?
Well, 30 seconds is really hard. So on paper, we do accounting. We do all the money in, all the money out, and we do auditing. So any of the authorities or any of the city departments that we want to figure out how they're truly functioning, and we want to truly protect our taxpayers from fraud, waste, and abuse, we audit those, and we issue audit reports, and we hope for corrections on those issues. I would take it a step further, because I've seen the art of the possible. I know that we can do so much more than that, because the controller's office really is the warehouse for all of the data and all of the research that comes along with these audits, that comes along with this accounting. So there's really so much more that we can invest our time and our resources in.
Yeah. And thank you so much for that, Tracey. And I'm so glad that you also hit on, how you even tap into the school system, so I really, really appreciated that. So my next question to you is, why you? Why should someone vote for you?
I mean, a number of reasons. I truly see myself as the most qualified candidate in this race. I have governed in the position. I have worked across the field with all kinds of different political leaders. I know what it means to lead and not just manage. I have led people in an office. I have advocated for people. I have advocated at a community wide level and gathered voices together for change. I have the education, I have the wherewithal, I have the tenacity. I certainly have a bold voice, and I am not afraid to use it on behalf of the people of the city of Pittsburgh. So I could be really good friends with somebody, or I could disagree with somebody, but I am going to point out what's right every single time. And I'm not just going to take no for an answer. I'm going to keep pushing until we've exhausted every possibility to make sure that we have the best government that serves everybody in this city and not just the few. Because I really believe, having been the acting controller at the county level, really being the only person who will stand up and actually knows the history and has been at the table with UPMC and our other large nonprofits. The history that I have with the Pittsburgh Public Schools and knowing them intimately as a graduate myself, as a parent, and as somebody who's sat on strategic visioning committees, like I know PPS. I love PPS. I'm a huge public school advocate. I know it's not always the choice for everybody, but again, we need those healthy schools to have healthy communities. That's what people look at when they move into a city or a neighborhood or whatever. I got so involved at one point. My kids were at Pittsburgh Minadeo, and everybody said they've been trying to build a playground for 30 years, but we just can't do it. It's too complicated. Well, guess what? I was like, no. That's not a thing. So I rolled up my sleeves and I raised the money and I went through all the red tape. I literally would walk this contract around between the law office and the school board and everybody else because I know how to get things done.
And
I'm tireless on that.
And I'm laughing because, because I know. I know.
We had an instant connection. We were like,
exactly. I know your boldness. I know your, you have the power of calling out fraud. You will have the power of making sure that there's no corruption in our city controllers or in our school boards or contracts or so I know. So that's why I started laughing because I literally could see someone saying to you, we just can't do it. And you getting it done. So I really, really appreciate that. My next question to you is so let's just, if somebody wanted to ask questions to you that I may not have asked or want to even volunteer, they may want to donate, they may want to just have a conversation with you. How can someone get in touch with you? I know you give your cell phone out at a whim, but if someone wanted to, either one of the above mentions, how can someone get in touch with you?
So my website is probably the easiest way, and that is www.royston, ROYSTON, 4, controller.com. And I'll throw out my cell phone in case anybody wants to get in touch. It is 412-726-7632. And only call me if you care.
Yes. And I would just great say, ladies and gentlemen, she do pick up and she does call back. So, and before we wrap it up, I don't want to go over a lot of your time because I know this is like in the middle of, and making sure that everyone, before we even go, make sure everyone knows the date of the last time they can get registered, the day of election. Can you tell us that before I asked you my last question?
Oh, I'm going to try. I might have to look it up though. I know that there's some important dates. Or May 1st.
That is correct.
Register.
Yep.
May 9th is the last day to request a mail-in ballot. I also want to plug that if you are not registered and you want to vote, you can go right to the county elections office downtown and you can vote over the counter. And the primary election is May 16th. And I just have to say how important that is. I know, like you said in the very beginning, people get really excited about presidential elections and bigger elections, but local elections are so critical because these are the people that really are representing you at the forefront.
Yes.
And you have important decisions to make. So I encourage everybody, get involved, go out and vote on May 16th, and do whatever you can do.
Yeah, and it's also I like to tell anyone that will listen that, in my lifetime, I don't know if we will ever be able to pick up a phone and say, Mr. or Mrs. President, I want to have a conversation. But our local elections, that's exactly what we can do. And so that's what I try to instill into everyone, to make sure that they understand how the local elections is the most important election of our lives. And so I just wanted to make sure that I throw that out. And before we do wrap it up, my last question to you, is there anything that you would like to say before we say goodnight?
I mean, so much. Where do I start? I just want to reemphasize that my priorities are schools, payments in lieu of taxes, land bank, and community. I will always be available to you if you invite me. Most likely I'll come. If I can't, I'll certainly tell you. But I am so steadfast in being responsive to people because I truly believe, and it certainly is the case, that the people are who elect you to office. The people are who you are representing. And without all of you, I can't do anything. It is important to listen every day to what is going on, because a bunch of power brokers on Grant Street shouldn't be making the decisions of how your lives are led and how your priorities are met. So I pledge to always make myself available. I hope to earn your support in your vote on May 16th and beyond. And I thank you so much for your time.
And I said it was my last question, but it isn't.
I could do this all night.
Can you tell us the importance of land banks?
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think that you'll know, I think we have something like 2,700 blighted properties in the city of Pittsburgh. And I mean, because I'm close to there, I can tell you 1,700 of them are in Homewood. And right now, those are properties that are just sitting there, and it's really an unsafe condition. I was actually in the East Hills last night, and there was a woman who was really concerned because people are using those properties and going into those properties who are likely up to no good. And it makes the neighbors feel unsafe. So not only is it a matter of, just seeing the blight and it not being attractive, of a public safety issue, but those properties are sitting there and they're not collecting any tax. So think about that. If we can get those properties on a sheriff's sale and we can turn them around to investors and buyers and developers who will rehabilitate them, it will not only be good for the community to have places that are inhabitable, to have places that are safer, but it will also bring money into our economy via taxes. And that is so important because, I might live right here and the house next to me is empty. And, basically when you come down to the equation, part of what I'm paying has to make up for those vacant properties. And that should not be the case.
And I just wanted to just make sure that you touched on so much, and so what's coming in my mind is a gentleman. He's a supervisor over there in Homewood. His name is Io, and he was very concerned about the vacant houses over there. A couple weeks ago, unfortunately, the kids went in to smoke cigarettes or smoke marijuana, and they found a body inside of an empty house. So this is something that is extremely important. And that's why I wanted to make sure that I asked you that question, before we hung up, because, and then you mentioned Homewood. So there are people in Homewood, west, south, east, and north, that is extremely interested and concerned about land banks. So I want to thank you again for that.
Absolutely. And again, it's possible. I mean, there's basically a roadmap on how to do this. And Ann Lewis, who's at the TriCog, is such a great leader and such a great resource to all of us. And there's several housing groups that are working on this issue, and we just have to make it easier for them to do that.
Wow, thank you so much. And so yes, did you want to have any more closing remarks? If not, please, you're more than welcome.
I mean, certainly reach out to me if there's somewhere I should be in the next couple of weeks. I want to be there. I want to listen to all of you. You know, I'm really excited for this because, like I said, I felt compelled to step up into leadership because I know that I am the right leader at the right time. This is a great city. We have so many assets. We have such great people, but it's not a great city for everybody. And it's not a great city if we're ignoring some of these huge issues that are on the table, like our schools, like our nonprofits not paying our fair share, and like people being closed out of the conversation. So I want to be that voice and boldly stand up for all of you. And I ask you to stand up for me and vote for me on May 16th.
Thank you so much. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Tracey Royston running for our city controller's office. She gave you her information to reach out. If there's something that you want to talk to her about, volunteer, donate, or just, and as she said, if there's somewhere that you think that she needs to be, please reach out and ask for her to come. Like I said, she does pick up. Her team does call back, so she's very accessible. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I will say good night. Tracey, thank you so much.
So
as always,
spend time with you.
Yes, as always. Please tell Chelsea I love her.
All right. It was so good to see you all. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend.
You as well.
On May 16th.
Yes, May 16th, ladies and gentlemen. Register to vote. The deadline, May the 1st, May the 9th, last for mail-in ballots, and May 16th. Make sure your neighbor has a way to get there. Make sure you have a way to get there. It is election day. And with that, good night, ladies and gentlemen.
Good night. Thank you.